Welcome to VNA Health Highlights, a program of the Visiting Nurse Association of Cape Cod. I'm Jeanne Sarnosky, and on today's program we're going to learn more about the Samaritans. And we're lucky enough today to have with us as our guest Stephanie Kelly, who's the Executive Director of the Samaritans. Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Jeanne.
Every time I go over the bridge and I see the Samaritan sign, I think, oh, we ought to have them as a guest on the show, because I'm sure viewers don't know as much as they think. So I'd like to start with just tell us a little bit about yourself so people can get to know who you are.
I'd love to. Thank you very much for having me today, too.
You're welcome.
I originally came here 22 years ago. I came here on a temporary basis. Obviously, temporary turned into permanent, and I love it here on the Cape, and I've been here ever since.
Great. How about your work? So have you always been involved with this kind of work, or?
Actually, I went into the human service field back in 1998. I have a daughter who has a disability, so I kind of learned through actually doing, and my mother had actually said to me, it's too bad that you can't get a job in this field because you would be really good at it, and I did, and I've been working in the human service field ever since.
Wow. And how long with the Samaritans?
This March it'll be 2 years.
Oh, great.
2 very fast years, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
So for people, and myself too, who are the Samaritans? How would you best describe them?
We are a non-denominational nonprofit. We're very volunteer driven, and our main mission is very simple, and that's to what we call befriend people, and that is to listen without judgment and empathetically to people who might be in need, and just help them share their pain for a brief period of time.
Now, they've been around for a little bit of time, Samaritans.
We just celebrated our 35th anniversary last year.
Really?
Yes.
Now, is that Samaritans in the U.S. 35 years?
Just our chapter, the Cape and Islands, Samaritans on Cape Cod and the Islands. To talk a little bit more about our history, we, as I said, were founded in 1977, but to find out more about the Samaritans, you really need to go back to the 50s in England, and we were founded by an Anglican priest there by the name of Chad Vera. And to try to make the story short, it's a very interesting story.
It is fascinating. Yeah.
There was they suffered a suicide in his congregation. It was a 14-year-old young girl. And Chad, who in his memoir will admit to being a little cocky and a little full of himself during that period, he had just gotten his graduate degree, and he decided that he was going to counsel all the congregants to help them through their grief and cope with this loss. So what he did was he had what we call the tea ladies come in, and they served tea and scones and sat with people while they were waiting for their appointment with Chad. What he found out after his first appointment when he came out, the only people that were there were the tea ladies. All of the other congregants had left, and he said, what happened? And they said, we listened. They talked and we listened, and they felt better, and they left. And as simple as that is, he founded the Samaritans based on that principle, befriending, and that's just listening without judgment, actively listening, not trying to fix, just to listen and be kind of a sounding board. So what happened then is equally as interesting. Monica Dickens, who is the great-granddaughter of Charles Dickens, was an aspiring writer herself, and she went to Chad and said, I'd really like to write a story for an article for a magazine. Can you tell me about the Samaritans? And he was very smart. He said, in order for you to really understand it, you need to become a Samaritan volunteer.
Wow.
Smart. And so she did. She went through the training, and it became really part of the fabric of who she was after that. It was part of her for the rest of her life. A few years later, she married an American, came here to the States, and founded the Boston Samaritans, and that was in 1974.
So that was the first one in the U.S.?
That was the first one in the U.S., yep.
Nice.
And then she decided in '77 that she was going to retire to the Cape. And what they found was that they were spending more time driving back and forth to Boston than they were actually in retirement here on the Cape. So she founded our chapter, which is the Samaritans on Cape Cod and the Islands, and that was in 1977.
Wow, so, that's a fabulous story.
It is, it is.
How large of a group is it in the States in general? So it started in Boston, we have this branch on the Cape, there must be other branches out there?
There are, I believe, 8 branches right now in the United States, and they're all on the eastern coast. However, globally, there are over 400 centers, and they're in 39 countries.
Wow.
So it's a very, very big organization.
Big organization. And volunteer-driven.
Volunteer-driven.
Wow. So I just want to touch on, do people think of it as a religious organization because of its early beginnings there?
They do, and that's understandable because of the biblical reference in our name, as well as being founded by an Anglican priest. But we are non-denominational. We are not a religious organization.
Okay, so people won't be nervous if they can go that way.
That's right.
And nonprofit, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Nonprofit. We are a 501c3 organization, and we are like most nonprofits on the Cape. We work very hard at fundraising, grant writing, and all of those wonderful things to get the funding that we need to run our programs.
Mm-hmm. What kind of fundraising? Do you have activities, or is it private donation? Yes,
the majority,
yes, and yes.
yes. The majority of our funding comes from private donations from individuals. We also get a lot of our funding from charitable foundations. I do a lot of grant writing.
That's an art in itself.
It is. It's a very fulfilling, difficult but fulfilling piece of my job. I enjoy it very much. I think that the key to successful grant writing and funding request is understanding and believing in what you're requesting the funding for, and I really do believe in what we do and have a very good understanding of it. So we get a lot of charitable foundation money. We also get funding from 2 major events that are board driven. We have a very, very active board of directors.
What size is your board?
12.
Okay.
We have 12
That's
members.
good.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as I said, very active. Over half of them are volunteers who work on the crisis lines, that sort of thing. So they have a very good understanding of what we do.
Right.
And they're a working board. So twice a year they put on 2 major fundraising events. In the spring we have our Monica Dickens golf tournament, and in the fall we have our Upper Cape Bocce Festival, which is a lot of fun. Yeah. And so those are both big sources of our funding. And then we also have a small amount of funding that we get from the Department of Public Health.
Do you already know your 2013 schedule for the golf fundraiser and the bocce?
I do. Our golf tournament is on June 17th, and it's going to be at the Pocasset Golf Club. And our bocce tournament, to my knowledge, is going to be September 22nd, I believe. And we have that at Falmouth Academy in Falmouth, and it's loads of fun. Both of them are a lot of fun. Bocce is much more family-oriented.
Okay.
We have all ages there, and it's a lot of fun.
Do you get a full show at the Pocasset golf tournament? You get fill all the
we do.
Fields? Yeah. Because that is a big, I think for Cape Cod, that's a big popular way for nonprofits to make money, and people participate well.
People want to golf here in the Cape.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to golf at Pocasset Golf Club, which is a private club, so we are fortunate that we're able to have our fundraiser there, because I think it has a big draw for golfers.
Do you find that the people who participate in the golf tournament and the bocce already know something about the Samaritans, or do you have that as an opportunity to sort of educate those that don't know?
I think that our golf tournament is primarily people who are familiar with what we do.
Is that right? Yeah.
Because a lot of our golfers are brought to us by people who are either on our board or volunteer for us already. Bocce is a little different because we will have people, because it's in the middle of Falmouth, on the day of the festival, we'll just have people stop by to watch and see.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe the next year they'll come back, and it's a great opportunity for us to tell them about what we do and recruit volunteers and have a lot of fun while we're doing those things. So.
Something like bocce, that's probably, you don't have a lot of competition for that one.
No, and it's just like I said, it's just so much fun, and it's the only one that I know of here on the Cape.
I'm sure. Yeah, that's great.
Until everyone watches your show, and then
there you go. I was like, good idea. We're going to do one of those. Now, employees. How many? It must be if you have a lot of volunteers.
We have 4 employees.
4 employees, as we all know, employees.
Yes.
Okay.
And
so that's you.
Me, our assistant director, our office manager, and we have a volunteer coordinator who is just absolutely priceless. Obviously, we couldn't do what we do with 4 employees.
Yeah.
We're very volunteer driven, and everything that we do is because of our volunteers. We have, I think, probably 70 active volunteers right now.
Nice.
Yep. And
where are you all located? Are you?
we're in Falmouth. Our call center is in Falmouth,
Okay.
and that's where we answered over 24,000 calls last year.
Really?
Yeah.
So the volunteers that answer the phones, that also happens in Falmouth, or can that happen at remote locations? Or?
Well, we have two different, that's a good question, because we have two different programs. Our crisis lines are answered at our call center in Falmouth. But we also have another program, our senior outreach program. And that program kind of evolved a couple of years ago out of the obvious increase in the number of seniors who are moving to the Cape and living on the Cape. And with that, unfortunately, is a rise also in the number of suicides in the senior population. So we decided to try to address that a couple of years ago by forming our senior outreach program. And it has three basic components to it. The first one is that we send out information about our crisis lines to seniors Cape-wide. We do that once a year in collaboration with Elder Services. We send out information, printed information with Meals on Wheels. So they go to over 1,100 people here on the Cape and Islands.
So it goes out like in flyers, or you actually do a mailing that goes into people's mailboxes, or it's distributed?
They're hand-delivered.
Oh, they're hand-delivered.
With
Excellent.
Meals on Wheels once a year.
Oh,
so
nice.
people get them in hand.
And Elder Services the same way? They kind of get them out there? Okay.
And then we work with a lot of councils on aging and the VNA and doctors' offices to kind of get the word out about the program. Basically saying that as seniors, we would love for you to call us if you need us, if you're isolated, if you're lonely, if you're depressed, call us. But we all know that some seniors won't do that. So we developed a second piece of the program, and that's our outgoing call program, which is very different for us because we are based on incoming calls.
You're used to answering the phone.
Exactly.
Not
We never
the
pick up the phone and call.
Right.
So what we do is if someone, say the VNA, had someone that they were concerned about, you could refer them to us, and we would match them with a senior outreach volunteer who would call them at least once a week. And they develop a friendship purely on the phone. There's no face-to-face contact. What it does is add to some of the services that people might already be getting through their local council on aging or Elder Services or the VNA, just another person to talk to. And the third piece is very new. We just developed a training last year called our Elder Suicide Prevention Training for Cape and Islands communities. What that does is offers a training to anybody in the community that comes in contact with seniors, either through their professional, their personal, or their volunteer life, to help them recognize the warning signs in seniors, to help them better engage with seniors and get them talking, and to help educate them about what resources are available. So we were fortunate enough through grant funding to be able to do that last year in 4 locations throughout the Cape. And it's a CEU program. We offer 7.5 CEUs. And so I'm sorry, 7 CEUs. It's a 7.5-hour training.
Right.
And we do that for nurses, licensed clinicians, mental health workers.
So it's something else that a nurse could add to her toolkit. She now has this other.
Absolutely. And we find that what it does is offers maybe something that people are familiar with from their other education, but we try to offer it in a little different way, in more of a Samaritan way, on how we engage people and how we listen. And so it's proved to be a very popular training.
Wow. So how many calls out did you make then? You know, the 24,000 that came into the crisis line? Is there, with this new program, do you know?
I think I calculated out
touched or
around
whatever?
900 last year. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Pretty good response
It
so
is
far?
very good response, and it gets better every year. We have more and more councils on aging referring. We're dealing with more and more towns on the Cape, but we're always looking for more referrals and trying to get doctors to be more engaged with that, and just basically put it out there. And it's just an extra service that people will get. It's very limited time commitment for the referring agency. What I do is I report back to them periodically about what's going on with their senior.
Wow. So how does it, walk me through just logistically, so you may get a call from the senior center on someone they're concerned about, or
sometimes it works that
or?
way. Sometimes we get a self-referred senior who may have called our crisis line and says, I heard about this program, could I be part of it? What happens either way is the referral comes to me, and then I have a pool of volunteers that some of them do more than just senior outreach. Some might be crisis line volunteers as well, but a lot of them are just dedicated to the senior outreach program. So I make what I think will be a good match, get them together, and then they just start calling. And then once a month, that volunteer will report back to me, or if there's any concern anytime during the month, if they can't get a hold of someone, to give you a short story of how well it can work.
Yeah.
I was working with a town on the Cape, and this gentleman, one of our volunteers, calls his senior faithfully every week. They have a set time schedule, everything. 3 weeks he couldn't get a hold of her, and he was very worried, and he called me. So I called the Council on Aging and said, we're really worried. And the woman was actually at the Council on Aging having a lovely lobster dinner, which was humorous in itself. But she had been very involved with all kinds of activities that have been going on. But the beauty of that story is that my volunteer was tuned in. He let me know. We let the Council on Aging know that we were concerned, and it all worked out well.
Yeah.
So,
and one might like to think maybe she became more active in her world because she was inspired by the phone calls she was getting from the volunteer.
I think so.
You get a little more comfortable with life and social interaction. Well, that's a great program. And how many do you find? You have some that cross over, but from the crisis line, but mostly it's your own group that does the senior outreach.
Yes.
It's a separate group that does that. Right. Then how long does that go on? Say if you had, like that particular example was great. For as long as it's needed.
For as long as anyone wants to be a participant.
Yeah.
We have some people that have been with us for 2 years, and it's their lifeline, so to speak. It's their one connection that they have. It's their one place in their life where they can say whatever they want and not be judged and not be worried about what they have to say.
So someone else out there cares about me, checking in regularly. And we're not related, so I could pretty much say whatever I want.
Exactly, yes.
Because that is a different relationship.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to just the crisis line piece of it, because that is a little bit how it all started.
That's our foundation.
That's your foundation.
I think when people think of the Samaritans, that's what they think of, is our crisis lines.
Yep.
And we do strive to have them manned and available 24/7. We're not always able to do that because we always are in need of volunteers, and so we do the best we can on that. As I said last year, we answered 24,000 calls just to our call center.
Right.
We do take primarily calls from the Cape and Islands, but we also have an 800 number, and we do take some calls that are filtered through the Boston Samaritans to us from all over the country. So it's a nice mix. It's a nice group of a lot of different people. The majority of them, another misconception I think that people have, is that the majority of our calls are what we would call actively suicidal people.
I think
people
of it,
who are standing at the bridge.
Thinking, it's that a suicide line. Even when you said crisis line, it's like, oh yeah, I didn't think of it as a crisis line. I always think of it as the jumper. Yeah.
And crisis is a very subjective term. Most of the people who call us are not standing on the bridge. They don't have a loaded gun in their hand. They are in crisis. They are isolated for whatever reason. They may or may not have someone in their life to speak to about what's going on with them. They could have lost a spouse. They could be going through a divorce. They could be having financial difficulties. It's just a million different reasons that they could call. What we strive to do is give that person a forum where they can speak safely. All of our calls are confidential. We have no way of tracking a call or looking at caller ID.
That's good
so
for people
call,
to know.
They really are confidential, and will never be, we'd never be able to get in touch with them again.
Right.
And I think that's really important because there are people who call for a lot of different reasons, and some of them are very, very personal. They don't have to be in such a crisis that they are feeling suicidal. What we try to do is provide them a forum before they get to that stage.
Oh, yeah. Can you give us some examples, just as
well, without
revealing,
breaching anybody's confidentiality? It could be that someone is newly become aware of their sexual orientation. And they may not want to talk to their family about it. They may not want to talk to their friends about it. They may just call us up and say, I think this is what happens. It's happening with me. What do you think? And if we're able to be okay and just give that person a safe place to talk about it, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to be able to do that. And other people may be dealing with substance abuse issues or mental health issues. So it's a lot of different reasons.
You get a lot of different, When I think, I'm just thinking of the viewers, if they're even thinking themselves, oh, I could call that number. Would it be okay if I called that number? You take kind of any kind of call? Every
kind of call. We want anyone who thinks.
Age group?
Oh, from teens right up into the 80s.
Really?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Do you track the kind of calls that you get so that you have a sense of what kind of training maybe that the volunteers answering the phone would need? Or
we don't track our calls because, as I said, it's a very anonymous and very private thing. When someone picks up the phone, we certainly don't want them to think that we're making notes or
one suicide,
they're a statistic or something like that.
One divorce, one whatever.
The statistics are very important, but we leave that up to the people who are so good at it, like the county, Barnstable County, that type of thing. So no, we don't. But from listening to our volunteers and over the years, we've developed a training that we think covers a lot of the different reasons that people would call. It's never going to prepare trainees for every call.
That was my next question. Is they must have some kind of training because how do you field all those different topics?
We do. We have a pretty intense training.
Do you?
It's a 5-night training. 15 hours altogether, 3 hours per night. And what we do is we try to cover every topic.
Do you teach it, or does someone else?
I co-teach it with our assistant director.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a wonderful opportunity to get to see the new volunteers, to remind ourselves about our callers and why we do what we do. Every other month we have this training, and it's a great way to revisit that. But we cover everything, like I said, from substance abuse to sexual orientation, mental health issues. The beauty about what we do, though, and what our volunteers do, is that anyone can do it. Our volunteers don't have to come to us with a degree in psychology. They don't have to have a background in counseling. They just need to have the desire to listen and to help people. And we're not designed to fix things. We're not designed to diagnose mental health issues. And when you take all of that and you take all those responsibilities away, it's a beautiful way to help someone.
To be a good listener.
Exactly.
It must be hard to not offer advice. Is that one of the challenges of being a volunteer?
For me personally, absolutely.
I mean, I'm thinking of myself too.
For me personally, and I think and for a lot of our volunteers, as human beings, I think we're designed to try to help and fix.
Yep.
We encourage people not to do that because sometimes it can be daunting just for someone to pick up the phone and dial us and tell us what their problem is. If we start to help them try to fix and give them advice and give them suggestions and they can't follow through, then it is frustrating for them and makes them feel as if they've failed even us, even this volunteer worker on the crisis line. I think the other biggest hurdle is silence and being able to use silence. It's very difficult for us. We want to fill those
the dead air,
pregnant pauses or what have you, and so it's difficult for us not to do that. But we find that when we just hold back and don't lead the conversation, that our callers will start to talk to us about more and oftentimes go in a direction we had no idea where it was going to go.
Oh, yeah. So some of the training is managing that dead space in the conversation and allowing people to talk more and really get it out of them what's going on. So the call might originate as something and turn into something completely different.
Very often so. We very often so. We could have a caller that says, what about those Red Sox? And you know that that's not really what they're calling about, but they might need to feel you out and test and make sure it's a safe environment before they get into what they really have called about. So,
is there an average length of call? Do you have any people on the call for an hour or 5 minutes?
Sometimes it depends on where they are in a crisis. We call it triage.
Oh yeah.
For our volunteers, because there is more than one line that's ringing usually.
Is that right?
Oh yes, and oftentimes there can be only one volunteer. So we have to learn how to kind of assess pretty quickly where someone is in their crisis and kind of figure out who we need to speak to first. And it can be very challenging.
Yeah.
That's why we need more volunteers.
Right.
So that we can have 2 or more people on a shift at a time.
At any time. Yeah. Then what happens? They call us back in 5 minutes, or?
Sometimes. It depends on what the crisis is, and Sometimes, unfortunately, we may have to stay with that caller, and at the expense of having someone else call. It's difficult. It can
That
be very
would be a big challenge, yeah. So the volunteer piece is huge. So you're Cape and the islands, so the calls come in from the islands?
They do.
But there's no center there?
No.
Doesn't matter because it's just a call process anyway.
Now we have, in the past, one of our other programs that we have started is what we call Safe Place. And that is for people who have lost someone to suicide, survivors who have lost someone to suicide. I'm not a statistician, but one of the statistics that I think is very telling about this is that for each person who dies by suicide, they leave approximately 7 people behind who are intimately affected.
Yeah.
And if you do the math, that's millions and millions of people.
Yeah.
What they're dealing with is a very unusual form of grief. It's unique to them. Oftentimes they feel very isolated by society because they are dealing with something that their friends or family members have not dealt with before. So people tend to step back. They don't know what to say, so they don't say anything.
Right.
Or they tend to, the myth is still, oh, that would never happen to me. Not my child, or not my mother, or my husband. And unfortunately, suicide is very, it doesn't discriminate. It's across all financial castes and all different races and
ages.
It doesn't discriminate. And so what we found was that we needed to find a way to give some support and some resources to individuals who are dealing with that. So we started up our Safe Place support groups, which we have twice a month in Falmouth and in Hyannis. And they're facilitated by individuals who are survivors themselves, who have lost someone to suicide.
You'd have to be,
which is very key because they have a very good understanding about what people are going through.
Yep.
So we have those, and then as a second piece to that, we developed our care package program, which is books and online resources and a journal, a lot of different resources that we think will be helpful for someone while they're coping and kind of healing from their grief. But they may be people who are not ready or not able to come to a support group. So we offer those free of charge to anyone that asks us for one.
So people can call and get that kind of support as well.
Right.
And you know what, I have like just barely a minute left. I know it goes so fast, so hopefully we've caught everything. I think it was good that you got those in there at the end. I appreciate it. Yeah. And if people are interested in volunteering or the crisis line,
sending money. Money is
Sending
always
money?
good.
There you go.
And
Okay,
as I said, we also have a very active board, so if anyone's ever interested in serving on our
Joining the
board,
board.
we would love that to
Okay.
give them that opportunity too.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. I appreciate your time today. That was great information. I learned a lot.
Thank you
That was
very
good.
much. It
All
was a
right.
pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
And I'm Jeanne Sarnosky, wishing you good health and good health care. Let me just sit here for a minute while they're on the crowd.